Ingela Lundh, thank you so much for talking to me today. You're in Sweden.
I am. I'm in Stockholm, Sweden. That's right.
How glorious. I wish I was there with you right now. We have known each other for a very, very long time. We both worked for Odd Socks Productions, and Andy and Ellie are one of the people, or two of the people, in fact, that I've been speaking to also. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are today.
Right. So I'm Swedish by birth. I was born and raised in Stockholm, and I'm living in Stockholm at the moment. And I spent, I think it was 8 years in the UK. I trained in London at East 15. And then I worked for different theatre companies in the UK for about 8 years. Odd Socks being one of them, and Forest Forge, and a few others. And then I moved back to Sweden in sort of mid 2000s, and here in Sweden, I've started my own theatre company with another colleague from the UK who also trained in the UK, Swedish Christina Leon, and we started the Stockholm English-speaking theatre because there wasn't one, and we were amazed. There was a Gothenburg English-speaking theatre, there was one in Malmö, but not one in Stockholm. So we set that up, and that was 10 years ago, and we've done everything from Shakespeare to Mamet to Sarah Kane, Mike Bartlett, modern and Shakespeare, both indoors in the winter and then the public theatre in the summer, open air, to thousands of Stockholmers, which has been brilliant. But obviously, since the pandemic, we haven't done any shows. It's all down. We've done one workshop this year. So I do that part-time, run the Stockholm English-speaking theatre, and I work as an actress here in Sweden. Film, TV, commercials, voiceover jobs. So I'm a bit of I dabble, I sort of do a bit of everything. I've also, in the last 5 years, I've started doing voice coaching. So I worked with Patsy Rodenberg. She has this training for voice coaches or voice teachers in New York. And it was supposed to be this year as well, but we did 1 month last summer. And then we were supposed to do another month this year in New York, but obviously we had to do it via Zoom. So I am training to be a voice teacher, using her methods, which is brilliant, absolutely amazing. I just find her methods to be so pragmatic and real, and no fuzz. It's just very practical and very pragmatic, and I love that. So I've started teaching online, voice online, everything from actors to scientists who have to give a lecture online, or politicians even, people who in some shape or form have to speak in front of an audience. So I dabble with many different things.
So tell us, Ingela, how has the pandemic affected you?
I think it's made me more mindful of how I spend my time, and also it has forced me to be more active, actually, and take initiative, both personally and professionally. Like there's a sense of urgency that's sort of changed, because it is so easy to fall into this slump, and I do it every day at some point during the day. Of course I do. But it's just made me realize, how precious time is, and how I spend it, if that makes sense. And I think personally, I've been worried more about people around me as well. I mean, I only have myself to provide for, but I used to go to this office space, like a co-op for actors, and which was always great because there was a great atmosphere. And obviously I don't do that anymore, and I'm in these four walls. So I miss that generous atmosphere of being with your peers and you know, bouncing off ideas and everything. That I really miss that. Um, and and mostly I've been also worried, you know, for my mother, who is 83, and she is as fit as a fiddle and still, you know, really excited to go places and travel and everything, and she can't do any of that. So she's, well, both bored and depressed, obviously, because she doesn't get any stimulation at all. So I'm worried that she's gonna, you know, be isolated and bored and sad, basically.
So, Ingela, how has it affected you professionally?
So I think because as I said before, I dabble and I do different things, that has really saved me. Had I only done acting and which is absolutely, um, you know, enough if you have enough work than that. But it just, if I only had the acting, it would have been very difficult for me to survive financially. So the fact that I'm teaching and I have this online teaching and um, also my own studio, I've managed to, at least financially, um, it's all right. You know, I've lost money, obviously. I've lost money, but I'm sort of okay. But professionally, in terms of acting, I mean, nobody's working. So, and it sounds a bit selfish, but it's like we're all in the same boat. Um, they've started doing some filming here in Sweden. Some people have started up the TV productions, and it's sort of slowly starting. And I've done a bit of TV, but it's very slow. Um, so that is just the way it is. And but I've been lucky because of these other jobs that I do.
Can you give us an idea of what it's been like from the beginning in Sweden in terms of the sort of the journey?
For everybody in Sweden, it's probably been easier than other countries because we haven't had a complete lockdown, because we have done it gradually, because there haven't been any restrictions, only recommendations. Um, you know, the faith that people will be clever, will be intelligent about it and keep social distancing and, you know, wash your hands and all those things. And here also um, the face mask issue has, we haven't used face masks at all, which is, I have to say that the jury's out on that one. I don't know. Every other country uses it, but we don't. So social gatherings, more than 50 people, is not allowed. And also in the theatres, they upped to 300 last week because there'd been this huge complaint from the arts community or the performing community that you know, you can go to shopping centres, you can go to nightclubs even, but you can't go to a theatre. And I think that question has been raised in many countries.
But I think there's a huge inconsistency across
yes,
the board, isn't there? I mean,
there's no reason. I mean, there's no logic behind any of the or many of the restrictions. But now they've, you know, gone down. Obviously, since the last week, the curve has just gone up in Sweden. So we're down to 50 again.
And so have the theatres been open the entire time, or has there been a period when things were closed? The restaurants, what's that like?
No, they've all been open the whole time. But I can just take an example. I was working at the Opera House in the spring, in February, just when everything started, and I was working as a dialect coach there, and then they decided to close down productions, at least for a bit, and they were only doing rehearsals. And now they've started productions again, but only 50 people in the auditorium. Yeah.
And what about actors working together? Has there been any restriction about the number of people who can be working?
So different theatres have done different solutions. I know at the Malmö Opera, they had the orchestra in another room, so that the music was streamed or, projected onto the stage. So the 50 rule obviously applies for not just the audience, but also the people on stage. Because it's only recommendations, they were only recommendations as well. Every theatre has done their own take on it, sort of.
So what about social distancing?
You mean when they're on stage?
Yeah.
Well, they're supposed to, yes. They're supposed to do social distancing, but, I'd be lying if I say that they were all the time. And I've seen pictures from dance performances from Malmö, and the dancers are, I mean, you can't do that as a dancer. It's impossible. Like, how 2 meters apart, so they they haven't. So, yeah.
It does sound, it's interesting because I spoke to Suna in Denmark a couple of days ago, and it sounds worse for Denmark than it does to Sweden. I mean, what do you think? What is the secret? What's Sweden done?
I would say that Sweden is a technocratic society. So we are a society of experts who give recommendations. And Swedish people love experts and recommendations, because our government, they are listening to the experts and acting according to the experts' opinions about things, but they don't make their own decisions. They've just said, we follow the recommendations of the National Agency of Health, and that sometimes I find that people put everything in the hands of the experts instead of having, their own social distancing, taking their own responsibility on how to act in the street and how to behave, a sort of social awareness.
But potentially your nature of being sheep then has actually been good in this situation, whereas the British, who are going, no, I'll do whatever I like, damn you. The idea of the Swedes kind of just doing, okay, well, if that's what we've been told, then that's what we will do, actually has been, it sounds like, the reason why you guys have done so well.
Yeah, I suppose there is a general acceptance of authority in this country. So I think that could be one of the reasons why it's gone well, but also the fact that you're 60 million in the UK and we're 10 million. I mean,
yeah. So actually, the arts and culture sector in Sweden hasn't suffered that much as it has in other countries.
The institutions like the Opera House, the National Theatre, the ones that are already subsidized by the government, I mean, they're heavily subsidized. It's like 90% of their budget comes from the government. I know in the UK it's the other way around. Even if it's the national or whatever it may be, it's the other way around. So obviously people who have a permanent contract in those theatres are okay. So far, we'll see. But it's the fringe scene, it's the smaller theatres, and we have a great fringe scene in Stockholm. There's so many beautiful theatre companies, great initiatives, but on the other hand, those people normally have other jobs as well, or do other things like myself. So they only survive because of resilience, really, because they sort of find other avenues. But I think the people who have really suffered the most are the gigging people, like, musicians, who that's all they do. They do gigs, they do concerts, they do. So I read an article the other day in the, and it said that the Swedish Music Union, they did a survey, and 30% of the members of the music union had decided already to change careers, to retrain. Yeah.
So there hasn't been any government financial support for them.
So now they're starting to get those things in place. So if you have a small business and like a shareholding company, you could get money from the government like this. But if you were self-employed, you weren't included in that. So most people who are in the arts sector here are self-employed. I was lucky enough that my accountant last year said, I think you should create a arbete called in Swedish. And, you know, that also saved me because I was included in that government, that, you know, the subsidies from the government that we got. But now I know that they have put sort of Arts Council funding in place that you can apply for if you're a musician or if you're an actor, but it's, you know, the competition is, you know, you won't get it like that. You have to apply for it, and it's quite hard to get. So
you have effectively an arts council, like we do have an arts council?
Yeah, we do. You have it on the national level, you have it on the regional level, and then you have it on the sort of council level. So whenever, like in my theatre company, whenever we do a production, we apply for money in all three instances. Normally we get it from the council because we're in Stockholm.
How have you kept yourself motivated throughout this pandemic?
An hour a day going for a walk with a different friend and asking how they are, kind of thing. In March and April, that's all I did. I was like teaching, and then an hour a day, you know, I called somebody and said, do you want to go for a walk? You know, distance, we can walk for an hour and just talk. So that was a really good, just these small things, and trying to keep fit. Boring, it sounds so boring when I say it's like, yes, no, I kept fit, but it helps
Enormously from a mental health point of view.
Yeah.
Definitely. I am not in any way a fitness fanatic. In fact, I avoid it wherever possible.
Me too.
However, I have found that I have needed to, and am now running every other day. I do yoga every other day, and it has helped me so much.
Absolutely. It's vital.
Do you think the arts industry, events industry, will be permanently damaged?
I mean, I think it definitely, there will be a before and after, definitely. I mean, there's been a great debate in this country of the value of the arts, you know, that the government doesn't see the value, and therefore that's the industry that's dwindling the fastest. That, you know, shopping centers, restaurants, bars have been open, serving people, far more people than are allowed in the theatre. So I think that the big question that comes up for me is people are starting to wonder, you know, what is the value of culture for people in general, and for the politicians, for the people in power. And now everything is online. You know, we've also been given a lot of free culture now during this time. You know, the National Theatre, it was great. You know, I could see shows that I probably never could get tickets for, and people who maybe couldn't afford to go to the National or to the West End or whatever could now get those shows in their own homes. So I suppose the question is, when all this is over, what culture are we willing to pay for? You know, what is the value, and how do you measure the value of what we do? It's not a new question. It's something, but I think it's come under, you know, it's become very clear, this question, and sort of reappear during this pandemic. What is the value? I don't know the answer. I really don't. I always find it tricky, and I'm constantly working on pricing myself. You know, whenever people ask me, so how much do you charge? What would you like for that? And it's, you know, most companies like, okay, for this we do this, and for this we do this, but in our business it's so sort of right. So when I'm a voice coach, for example, if I have a client who's a politician, there's one price, and if I have an actor, it's another. So I think what is the value of culture is the big question that needs to be investigated. Does that make sense?
I think that's quite similar to what we've been feeling about our politicians and our government is that, you know, culture isn't at the top of the list.
Nope.
But then that makes sense too, you know, it does make sense. It's such an enormous diversity of people who work in the industry.
Yeah.
That and the inconsistency of, and this is what I've talked to a lot of people about, how, the inconsistency of the way they get paid. As you say, you know, most places, this is the price for this, this is the price for this. That doesn't happen in our world, does it?
No. You never know. You could be like, oh, you want to give me that much? Oh, great. Fantastic.
Is there any circumstance where you would work for free?
Oh, I would have to say almost never. I mean, okay. That's a big question. I think I would work for free. It was, let's say, new arrivals to the country, and they wanted me to help them with Swedish, or if there was a film project or a theatre project that I really, really believed in, and they just didn't have any money, and I had the time, and I had I just had money coming in the month before, possibly, yes. I mean, I'm not like, but I normally say, no, I wouldn't work for free.
Good for you.
Because, no.
I think there are a lot of young actors who would. There are a lot of musicians, a lot of, unfortunately, and that enables people to expect people to work for nothing, doesn't it?
I know, and I understand them. I mean, I understand you're new in the business, you're raring to go, and you really want to say yes to everything. And of course, I mean, I was like that in the beginning too. But it's like they have to toughen up earlier.
Why did you go to drama school in England?
Well, I think there were two things. I wasn't excited about the theatre scene in Sweden at the time. I loved English actors, and the quality that I was seeing. You know, I only saw stuff on TV, but I always thought, God, the British actors that they are the best. I mean, they are. It's just believable, and the skill and the technique and everything. So I was just very intrigued by your training and what you did.
So why did you then come back to Sweden?
Another good question. Ooh, I think it was two things. I missed my friends and my family, and I do miss England still. I still miss the UK, but it was that case of, you know, just being where your roots are. It was more a personal thing, and then I got a job here. I got a job at the National here for 4 months, and I was like, well, that if that isn't a sign, I don't know what is. But I have to say, the first 5 years, they were really difficult, because an international or a drama training from another country isn't considered valid. It's not. The state schools are, that's the thing. You need to be a graduate of one of the schools to be sort of accepted and you know, to get the stamp of approval. So I did have to fight for a bit.
What's made you the saddest about the current situation?
Selfishness of people, you know, not keeping the distance, even though we've been quite respectful in this country, but, you know, obviously you have people here who don't keep the distance, and who don't, you know, the cough right out in your face, and people not being aware and not considering other people. I think that's made me the saddest. And also the way we've treated our elderly, because this was a big problem before as well. It wasn't very organized, the care for the elderly, the training. There's a lack of training, and, you know, people who take care of the elderly are normally, it's sort of a job they take like that. It's just to survive, and some are great, but there's a lack of knowledge and training. And during the pandemic, they didn't have any protective gear, no masks, no gloves, nothing. And they were going into these people's homes, doing, feeding them and washing them and doing everything. And of course, the curve among the elderly was just, they were dropping like flies. It was dreadful. So that made me really sad, that the way we treat our elderly, and it's a big problem and it needs to be addressed.
What would you like your legacy to be?
Oh, yeah. I would say I hope to leave behind some kind of good storytelling, in the shape of a play, a film, TV series that has somehow changed somebody's way of thinking, or made them think in another direction, or to tell stories is really what I do, and share stories is really what I do, and help people share their stories through also voice and stuff. And then I hope to be remembered as a curious and generous friend, I hope, and partner, somebody who's contributed in some way, with support and curiosity, and and in terms of what I do, I think now that I'm working a lot as a voice coach as well, that's given me a real new purpose also. So I hope I've helped people become more aware of their own abilities, through teaching, more aware of their surroundings, and help them sort of find their own power. You know what I mean? That they have a voice, they have a mind, they have a body and a spirit, and to use it for something, to use it for good.
That's really nice. I like that a lot. A lot of people keep likening this to, the war, the Second World War, or, it's that same, it's just as bad. But what they forget is, during the war, people had each other. They got together, they hugged, they gave each other love, they had sex, there was a very much a physical closeness that kept people going. And I think that's the tragedy of this, is, yes, we are fighting an invisible war, but we can't take solace in each other.
No, absolutely.
Ingela, thank you so much.
Thank you. This made my day.
Oh,
It's great.